I know we're in a Nigeria podcast, but the only Ghanaian I'm jealous of is Kudus in anything.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching this from. Welcome back to Eagle Striker, the home of Nigerian football. I have a special episode coming up for you guys. Just a quick recap on the European club competitions and how the Nigerian players are faring. And I was thinking of the right person to have on, to discuss this topic with me. And I decided to go with someone who I know is one of the fanatics of Nigerian football like myself. He also has his own channel, his own podcast called the Nigerian Football Weekly Podcast. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, everybody. Always a pleasure to be here. Olu of Nigerian Football Weekly Podcast, as AyoT mentioned. Ready to discuss and get into the details of European football and talking about all things Super Eagles players. So let's get into it.
Thank you very much, Olu. So yeah, let's jump right into it. We'll start with kind of a recap of the week. The past 2 weeks of knockout rounds. The Champions League, we had only one Nigerian player really in action. It would have been two, but unfortunately, Zedu Sanusi is out with an ACL injury, so couldn't feature against Arsenal in that dramatic penalty shootout defeat for Porto versus Arsenal. But the Nigerian player that we had in action was the superstar of Nigerian football right now, Victor Osimhen. Napoli were up against Barcelona, who probably a lot of people will say it's not a very strong Barca team right now. They've had their struggles in recent times. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be for Osimhen's Napoli. In the first leg, he got a goal for them. It was an interesting one. And in the second leg, I think I watched that game. I think Napoli were soundly beaten, in that second leg. The 17-year-old centre back, I forget his name right now. He was.
I was literally googling his name
in that game. But yeah, what do you think of Napoli against Barca and Osimhen's performance in particular?
Yeah, as I said, I was just Googling it. So, Pau Cubarsi, so 17-year-old. Full disclaimer, anyone who listens to Nigerian Football Weekly will know I'm an Arsenal fan, so I did not watch Barcelona Napoli. I had it in the corner because, obviously, my team trying to get into the Champions League for the quarterfinal for the first time in 14 years was more pertinent for me. But I did see the goals on the side of my eyes, and I've seen the highlights. To be honest, similar to you, I don't think there was any surprise. I think Napoli was soundly beaten, which is not necessarily surprising. I think when you look at both teams, they're both in limbo at this current moment. Barcelona were champions of La Liga last year, and we know that Xavi's already decided to step down. Napoli won their third Scudetto in God knows how long. I even went to Naples to watch the win, so I know how much that meant to them. But in the history of me watching European football at 31 years old, I've never seen a more pathetic title defense than this Napoli 2024, along with Jose Mourinho's, was it 2016 title defense after finishing first. I mean, it's been an absolute shambles. Napoli already on their third manager. And I think watching the game, it was finely poised. You would have liked to have seen Napoli be able to take advantage of a few things that worked in their favor. Barcelona are not playing in their home stadium. They're playing in the Olympic Stadium. They have quite a few injuries where they're having to play a 17-year-old Cubarsi. And also we saw Yamin Lamal and all these youngsters play. But watching the highlights, I think it was just a very unlucky game. Napoli was soundly dispatched, but in the first 4 minutes, we know Osimhen had his first one-on-one, and he's still snatching at these chances. I think when you watch all the highlights from the game, Barcelona deserved to win. Napoli had one or two moments because it was finally poised for majority of the match when it was 4-3 in aggregate. 3-2 on aggregate before Lewandowski scored the final goal in the 83rd minute. But very, very disappointing from Napoli. I think when you're the chosen one or the anointed chosen one, the way Osimhen is being spoken about, is these moments where you have to step up. You're always going to be judged by the big games and the big moments. So, even though I'm one of Osimhen's fiercest defenders, it would have been nice to see him step up. Apart from that one-on-one, I don't remember seeing him have any other chance. The 17-year-old centre-back really did a good job on him. But I also think from the outside, I feel like Osimhen is counting down his days till the summer, because Napoli's been a bit of a shit show and a shambles. Forgive my language. All the changing of the team on their third manager for the year. There's no consistency. Now Italy may not even, in fact, Italy will not get a fifth spot in the Champions League after all the Italian teams are out now. So that race for fourth is even more tricky for Napoli. I think they're almost 10 points behind. So all in all, just a very, very disappointing game. As our one remaining superstar in the tournament and even Nigerian in the tournament, would have definitely liked to have seen more. But I don't want to put all the blame on Osimhen. Napoli are absolutely terrible right now. Like over the weekend, you saw them concede again, and it's just not looking great. So good
let me
luck
just
to him.
jump in very quickly. Yeah. So you said you're one of Osimhen's fiercest defenders, and that's something that I had in mind to ask about. Not you in particular, but Nigerian fans. When Osimhen doesn't have a good game, if you go on our social media comments now, you see they're there. It becomes, oh, Napoli players are so useless. They play for themselves. They don't pass to Osimhen. In this game alone, you mentioned it early in the game. He had a one-on-one. He had a few other moments that were offside. The goal that Napoli did score, it was a good pass. I forget who played the pass. I think it was Politano Raspadori that got the assist.
Yeah.
Osimhen made a good run across, the face of the box. If he had played it square, Osimhen would easily have tapped that in. But he obviously also chose another good option that led to their goal. But what do you think about this thing that Nigerian fans always have, that if Osimhen has a bad game, it's the fault of Napoli? If he has a good game, oh, almighty Osimhen, how great he is. What's your take on that?
I mean, guys, it's just social media. Like we all know that Osimhen is the first Nigerian player we've had probably since Mikel Obi, who's won titles at a top five league. And even Mikel Obi was not necessarily a more important player than Drogba, Lampard, Terry. This is the first time that I can remember that a Nigerian player was the star player for a team that won the league in a top five league. So naturally, people are always going to be defensive and want to protect him, especially because we know what Osimhen did for us in the Under-17 World Cup. So I think sometimes there's this additional tinge of like, we must support our own. But I'll be honest, I think it's just social media. The same way you go on social media after Osimhen's AFCON, there's people who are trying to slander him, say he didn't play well, even though he was important in all the games that we played. Or like you just mentioned with the Barcelona goal, Osimhen's action helped them score that goal because he drew the two centre-backs away for Ramani to put the ball in the net. Same thing we saw with some of Lookman's goals at AFCON. So I just think it's just a tribal thing. But honestly, I don't pay them any mind. The same Nigerians will come and slander someone because they're born abroad when they don't play well, or then praise Ekong because he's the king and he won. I think it's all rubbish. I think at the end of the day, I like the way Osimhen supported, but we have to be objective. The same way, I think it goes both ways with Osimhen. The praise is a bit over the top sometimes, and the criticism is a bit over the top at times. But I think it just comes with the territory. When you're a player like Osimhen that has the potential to become probably Nigeria's greatest footballer, if please, the people don't slander me, if certain things happen in his career over the coming few years, it's naturally going to come with the territory, but I don't think we should pay any mind. He's part of Napoli. He's part of the team. He has to take the blame along with the team. And if we're being honest, from the highlights, he wasn't as impactful as even like Kvaratskhelia, for example, who I saw go quite close to scoring in a few moments. But I also get it because if Osimhen makes the right move in the summer, signs for the right team, we all know what the potential is, especially people like you and I who've been following or tracking him for 3-4 years and been singing his praises. But we must take the good and we must take the bad.
Well said, very well said. I just wanted to get your take on that. Okay, let's transition quickly to the Europa League, second tier of European club football. We had quite a number of players in the Europa League. Some made it through, some didn't. With Sirius and Rangers, they unfortunately lost a nail-biter against Benfica in that second leg at the Ibrox. They lost 1-0. It was quite a beautiful goal. I had a close eye on that match. They lost 3-2 on aggregate, so Desas is out. Of course, Leon Balogun is also part of the Rangers squad, but he's been out for a while now with an injury. We had Sparta Prague versus Liverpool. Victor Olatunji plays for Sparta Prague. That one was a whitewash for Sparta. Liverpool just absolutely dominated them. It was 11-2 on aggregate. they simply stood no chance. And this is one of those things that you see the difference in quality between the leagues that some of our players play in and the top leagues in the world. We also had AC Milan, like you mentioned, against Slavia Prague. AC Milan had Samuel Chukwueze and Slavia had Igor Ogu and Mohamed Tijani.
Tijani.
Slavia Prague again, not on the same level as AC Milan. It was something that I always knew they had the potential to score a goal. In the first leg, they scored two beautiful goals. They scored another good goal in the second leg, but ultimately 7-3 defeat on aggregate. Samuel Chukwueze did not play a key role or any role, if we're being honest, in that victory. But kudos to AC Milan. We had also. Even though Boniface is injured, we had Nathan Teller featured in the first leg of Bayer Leverkusen's dramatic matches against Karabakh. In the first leg, they rotated their squad a little bit in the first leg. They went 2-0 down. I was like, oh my days, are they actually about to lose? We saw the heroics, came back 2-2 in the first leg. In the second leg, this time they didn't rotate their squad as much, even though they kept Patrick Schick on the bench. It was, a lot of their starting players. And then again, with one man down, Karabakh go 2 goals up. And I'm like, I remember I was on my group chat to my boys. I'm like, it's like Karabakh have Bayer Leverkusen's number, because I don't understand how this is the team that they are going to lose their unbeaten record to. And then again, man, I was just, after that game, I was like, why didn't I just place one quick bet, on Bayer Leverkusen to win? Because the comeback was impressive and they didn't even need extra time. Won that second game 3-2, won 5-4 on aggregate, and now they are going into the quarterfinals. Bayer Leverkusen, the resolve in this team, the heart of the team, the way Xabi Alonso has them playing football. Honestly, right now, I'm just waiting for Boniface to come back so that he can continue what he was doing before he got hurt, because, man, this team looks very impressive. And then the last Nigerian player we had in the Europa League round of 16 was Ademola Lookman with Atalanta. Of course, scored an important goal for them in that second leg against Sporting CP. Helped them to get the equalizer before Skamaka went on to score the winner. And, Atlanta advanced to the quarterfinals. So just very quickly, what do you think about the Nigerian players involved in the Europa round of 16? Was there anybody that impressed you? Was there anybody that let you down? What do you think?
Great question on AyoT. I think similar to your thoughts, I think it's very good that we have a lot of representation from our Nigerian players in these games. I think one thing to mention with Bayer Leverkusen, even though Boniface is out, we know Teller didn't play yesterday, but this is why we always talk about momentum in football. It's funny how it always works. But I was watching this game. I actually watched the end of it, and I believed my eyes because it was Leverkusen, but I couldn't believe my eyes because of, it's like, again, 2 stoppage time goals. So I think that's quite an interesting fixture. And similar to you, I want to see what Boniface could do when he comes back, especially because we know he was the top scorer in the competition last year for Union Saint-Gilloise. So that'll be very good to see. I don't need to try and sound all technical or like we're talking about some player nobody knows about. The most impressive player for Nigeria in the Europa League is Ademola Lookman. Like, when you think about the club he plays for, Atalanta's resolve. Yes, you could argue Atalanta's player of the season is Cup Miners from the Netherlands right now. But I love how Ademola Lookman, even when he went to AFCON and came back, you can tell this is a very important player for their team. He starts games. Even when he doesn't play, you could tell the treatment is, Lookman's one of our star players. We need him back. And I just love the way he even links up with Skamaka now, who's a striker. I'm particularly fond of him because he should not be as technically good as he is with his height, but it's an interesting mix. But I think Lookman, always coming up with decisive goals, being there in important moments. And I just love knowing that he has settled into that team very, very nicely. So Lookman is the one that stands out for me. The rest, to be honest, none of them were on the winning side, apart from Teller. I didn't watch the Deserts game, but I was keeping an eye out because I wanted to see how he would do. I think they were slightly unlucky. But Rangers also, if I'm being honest, I think they've been performing beyond their above what I would have expected of them in the Europa League in the past few years. We remember Joaribo scoring the Europa League final 2 years ago, for example. So not quite surprising, I mean, Rangers is a bit of an interesting one. They're still in the driving seat to win the league, so I think they'll focus on that. But in terms of players, 100%, Ademola Lookman, for sure. Nobody else.
And let me just ask you very quickly about Samuel Chukwueze. Yet to make, I would say, a real impact for AC Milan since he joined them in the summer. Just very quickly, what do you think he can do, or needs to do to raise his level and to become an impactful player? Because the person that's benching him, Christian Pulisic, is not letting up, man. Almost every game, Pulisic is scoring a goal or is providing an assist. So what do you think Chukwueze can do to really become somebody at AC Milan?
Great question. I think Samuel Chukwueze has been a bit of an interesting place. I think we could tell AC Milan signed him with the right intentions. He had one of his best seasons, if not his best season, for Villarreal last year. And I just think there's two things. One, unfortunately, the player also signed ahead of him, Christian Pulisic, has been having probably his best season in a few years. Christian Pulisic keeps scoring important goals, both in the league, both in the Europa League. And I feel like naturally, because of that, it's just limited the minutes Chukwueze would have. So he kind of just has to wait his turn. In terms of turning things around, two things. When I saw the video of him coming back to AC Milan after AFCON, it is clear that he's a very liked player and someone who the rest of the teams clearly get along with. So even from the angle of just human interaction and someone who people want to do well, I think he's in the right place. But ultimately, when you're in this kind of situations, you just have to take your opportunities when they come. There's not really so much more we can say because Pulisic will continue starting games. But what we need to see is when you come off the bench, can you make an impact? Can you, take on players and really be decisive? I think from the outside, Chukwueze reminds me a bit of Zaha in the sense that he's clearly a confidence player. Because when you see Chukwueze when he's on and he's doing these things for Villarreal at the Bernabeu, or you're almost wondering like, mate, you should be starting beside Osimhen every day for the Super Eagles. But we watched AFCON and saw Chukwueze not even start. I mean, they started him in the final, but let's not talk about that. We're here to talk about AC Milan. So we all know what the evidence has showed us since 2024. But I do think he needs to just catch a break. All you need with players like this, especially when it comes to confidence, is one moment. Can you score a decisive goal in Serie A? Will we see him involved when they play Roma in the Europa League quarterfinals? And he needs to be able to take his chance. But I'm afraid right now he just needs to wait his turn. Because Christian Pulisic, sometimes I don't like American bias, but we have to also be honest when a player is doing very well and settling in well. And Pulisic is doing that. So I think it's just a case of biding his time. But making sure that he's able to contribute and have a big moment within the next few weeks.
All right, very well said. Thank you for that, Olu. Okay, before we go into the quarterfinal draws, let's just quickly go to the Conference League and talk about round of 16, and then we'll take the draws for both competitions together. So in the Conference League, we had a few Nigerian players in action again. We had Chuba Akpom, if you consider him Nigerian, in action for Ajax. They were soundly beaten by Aston Villa after a goalless first leg, 4-0 in the second leg. Ajax have been very shaky this season, barely surviving in the Eredivisie even. So it wasn't too surprising to me that they lost against Aston Villa. We also had Club Brugge. Rafael Onyedika was in action. He had quite a very good game for Club Brugge as they overcame a first leg deficit to defeat Molde in that round of 16 tie. PAOK were in action. Of course, William Troost-Ekong is still injured after recovering from his surgery, but they advanced to the quarterfinal with a 5-3 win over Dynamo Zagreb. And then finally, we had Bright Osai Samuel. Unfortunately for him, he had a goal disallowed in that game. They did lose the second leg 1-0, but their first leg result was enough to make them 3-1 aggregate winners over Union Saint-Gilloise. So 3 Nigerian players in the Conference League quarterfinals and 4 Nigerian players in the Europa League quarterfinals. Let's get into the draws very quickly. So we'll start with Chukwueze AC Milan because you had mentioned it. They are going to be playing against AS Roma. AS Roma, who have found a new lease of life under their new manager, De Rossi, since Mourinho left and they came in. Of course, we know there's new manager bounce, but that has lasted for a little bit of time now. La Liga, rather Serie A rivals, they know each other well. What do you expect to see in this tie, very quickly?
I mean, great fixture. I think it's going to be one that should be very interesting. The one thing with European football, from what I've realized, is whenever two teams from the same country are playing each other in Europe, form, expectations, who's the favorite, all that goes out the window. I mean, we saw Tottenham beat Man City a few years ago. We see it all the time when it comes to these. I mean, last year we thought Napoli would beat AC Milan in the Champions League, even though they were first. We know what happened. So I think this one is going to be a very, very good tie. It's too close to tell right now. Roma are riding this wave of the new manager bounce, as you said, but I have a feeling that the way Milan have looked quite comfortable in the two knockout rounds they've played so far should see them through. I think when you think about teams like AC Milan, Liverpool, or even like an Aston Villa in the Conference League, that's the one thing that you have to say with the Europa League or the Conference League can sometimes make it a bit unbalanced because these are clearly almost Champions League level teams. And the way you see AC Milan and Liverpool swat aside these teams, sometimes you're almost like, we know you shouldn't have been here, but nobody begged you to finish third in your Champions League group. So, to be honest with you, I can't see anything else but an AC Milan win. I know that they will qualify for the Champions League through their league position, but you could tell that they're motivated to really play well in Europa League. I mean, I don't know if you've seen Leao's goal yesterday. Like,
I did.
I mean, we know he's destined for the top, but I just think AC Milan have that European pedigree. You don't have 7 titles for no reason. I mean, Roma must not be underestimated. They lost the final last year, and they're playing very well. And they also have one of my favorite FIFA players ever in Paulo Dybala. So I'll say it's too hard to tell. It's probably a 50-50. But if I must say, I would say AC Milan should go through. And hopefully we could see Chukwueze get the moment we've been talking about, even if it's for 10 minutes.
Okay, moving on to the next fixture involving a Nigerian player, of course. We have Ademola Lookman, Atalanta going up against Premier League side Liverpool. Liverpool just brushed aside Sparta Prague in their round of 16 fixture, whereas Atalanta, hustled to defeat Sporting CP in their own fixture. Do you think Atalanta have a chance against Liverpool?
I do. I really do. I mean, just to put the disclaimer out there, Liverpool are clearly the favourites to win this tournament. They have the European pedigree. They've won the Europa League when it was still called UEFA Cup in 2001. I think I was 8 years old. One of the first ones I remember. But make no mistake about it. I think Atalanta is as tricky a tie as Liverpool could have gotten. Everyone keeps talking about Liverpool and Leverkusen because they're both fighting for the title in their respective leagues. And we know Leverkusen, unless they miraculously mess up again and become Leverkusen again, they should win the Bundesliga. But Atalanta are one of those interesting teams that they're like almost like a pesky fly. They won't go away. I don't think Liverpool are going to be able to play the way they played against Sparta Prague against an Atalanta. Atalanta are going for the Champions League in Italy. They're one of the better teams. Lookman is coming back into form. Cup Miners is having a storming season, and I'm sure someone's going to spend 60 million to sign him in the summer. But I really think this is one of those banana skin ties. I think it will be close. I think Atalanta will put their all into it because who doesn't like an exposure fixture against one of the big dogs of Europe? But ultimately, I'm not going to lie to you. Liverpool are going through. Like they are way too good for the Europa League. And I'll even slander my own club, Arsenal. The one difference between Liverpool and Arsenal is Liverpool have European pedigree. Games that they should be brushing aside teams, Liverpool will do it when Arsenal will complain and lose to Unai Emery. So I think it'll be a very entertaining game. It's not going to be an 11-2, but I think Liverpool will definitely still sneak through quite comfortably. Maybe like a 5-3 on aggregate, 4-2 on aggregate. But as long as Lookman shows good account of himself and maybe gets another goal here or there, I'll be happy.
No, yeah.
But they're going out.
I think I would largely agree with you, honestly. I think Liverpool would have too much for Atalanta in this one. My prayer is just Lookman can probably get a goal or two in, across the two legs, show himself a little bit. I've been hearing some rumors here and there that he might be looking to leave Atalanta at the end of this season. So obviously playing against the Premier League side, of course he's an English boy. He's been in the Prem before, so this is
exactly
an opportunity for him to show himself against the Premier League side. And if he can get a goal or two, who knows what would happen. But even with Jurgen Klopp's farewell tour currently going on, they are still having this dream that they can win the quadruple, or what are they currently going for? So I think
I'm gonna say
Liverpool.
this. I'm gonna say this because my twin brother is not here. But Liverpool, there's some kind of force that's pushing them, bro. Like I still think Arsenal's a better team, but look at them in the Premier League. They're still staying with us. So I totally agree with you. Like this farewell tour that has all these young players playing like they're juiced up on like I don't know, Compound V. And you'll play these games and from nowhere you'll see like some player with number 85. He'll come and score a goal or Jaden Dans and I mean, there's some force. I agree with you, but I totally agree with your points 100%. Lookman is well known in England and the Prem. He's more well known than almost every other player outside of Liverpool to the English public. So as long as he puts on a good show for himself, I think he'll be good. Although my personal opinion, I hope what you said is incorrect. I hope he stays at Atalanta one more year. I think he should not forget what Atalanta has been able to do for his career by just being settled. And when you have a manager like Gasparini, who's almost like a club to Atalanta, when you consider where Atalanta came from budget-wise, Atalanta have been in Champions League 2 or 3 times in the past 8 years, which is almost the equivalent of like Fulham making the Champions League, you know? So I hope he stays there, continues to knuckle down, and continues to grow his reputation in Syria. And then maybe in the summer of 2025, we see what could happen. After AFCON, that would be my prediction.
Okay. And then very quickly, the last Europa League game involving Nigerian players is Bayer Leverkusen against West Ham. Victor Boniface ideally should be back fit. I'm hearing that he might play against Hoffenheim at the end of March, so he should be available for the Europa League matches in April. And of course Nathan Teller as well. Sort of, not sort of. Realistically, he's a substitute for Bayer Leverkusen, but he does get his chance in every 1 or 2 matches. Going up against West Ham, who dispatched Freiburg in their own tie in the round of 16 quite comfortably in the second leg. Again, against the Premier League side, I think it's always interesting when I like seeing our Nigerian players play against Premier League sides. Do you think Leverkusen will be able to continue their fantastic run throughout this season and knock West Ham out, or could West Ham be that the end of the road for them in this competition?
I'll be honest with you, I think this is a very 50-50 tie. The only reason I say it's 50-50 is we know what Prem quality is about. I know we're on a Nigeria podcast, but the only Ghanaian I'm jealous of is Kudus in anything.
See,
I watched this boy play.
I was literally watching that game and I was just thinking like the way Nigerians are always crying about we need a midfielder. I was just like, imagine if we had Mohamed Kudus in our side.
Bro, like, let me not turn this into an appeal for Arsenal, but he's one of those players that really moves you. Like, I mean, that goal yesterday, the confidence, taking it on, and then the celebration. I like players that know who they think they are the shit and they prove it. And it's like, yeah, like, and you see, do you know how hard it is to make West Ham fans love you that quickly? We had a West Ham fan go to AFCON to watch Ghana because of Kudus. So, just to bring back the discussion, I think it's a 50-50 tie simply because of Leverkusen's other focuses. We know Leverkusen used to be called Leverkusen. They've never won the Bundesliga. They've gone close, and now with the 10-point lead above, I feel like Bundesliga's their main focus. What I think is positive for them is they have about 3 Bundesliga games and a DFB Pokal semi-final to play before that first leg. So, as we all know, there's, 9 games left to play in the Bundesliga. If Leverkusen can win the next 3 games before this tie, then I think they will bring their full strength side because they would have 6 games left with a 10-point lead. That means you just need to win 3 more games to win the title. So I really think it's a bit unfortunate for West Ham because of the timing. If this game was in 2 weeks, for example, then I would say, okay, maybe West Ham could have a better chance because Leverkusen may not be as ready. But I think Leverkusen will give this their all. They're representing the Bundesliga and they're top of the league. So I would expect Leverkusen to continue to show us what they've been showing us in the Bundesliga, especially with these their fullbacks and the resilience we've seen. Look at Patrick Schick. He knows he's going to be back up for Boniface, but he's eating too. Everybody's getting some. So I think, to be honest with you, I think this is the tie of the round in the Europa League because it feels very 50-50 because this is where we see Prem quality because West Ham may be 7th in the Prem But when you look at the players they have, Kudus, Bowen, Paqueta, oh my God. Don't let me get started on Paqueta. But my point is, this is going to be a very, very, very interesting game. But I think Leverkusen, West Ham have a chance for sure. But if I was to predict, I think Leverkusen will be a bit too strong for West Ham. But at the very same time, if West Ham won this tie, I would not be surprised. Simply because, man to man, if you're a Leverkusen player and you go out of the Europa League, when you know that you're about to win the Bundesliga and finish first and go to the Champions League, would you be as mad? Yes, there's professional pride, but I mean, they got bigger fish to fry, so I don't think it'll worry them as much, to be honest, simply because of that. So let's see, 50-50, but I think Leverkusen, with the resilience they've shown in the last two rounds, I think they clearly want it, so let's see how they get on. Hopefully, like you said, Boniface will be back and we can see him in action.
And I think I have to agree with you. I think it's a very finely poised tie. Either team could win. My prediction would honestly be for that Bayer Leverkusen would edge this one. Probably like a 4-3 aggregate victory. I see it being a very close one. But this Leverkusen side, man, they just keep on impressing and showing themselves in ways that we couldn't see. Earlier in the season, we thought, okay, it's just a purple patch, they are doing well. But the way they go into games, and I think even the combination of their style of play, the efforts that the players put in, as well as just showing resilience to get the results, everything is just working so right for them. Even though, like you mentioned, their main focus is the Bundesliga, of course it is. In fact, anybody in the world should want that to be their main focus because we are tired of Bayern Munich just winning that. But at the same time, I think that they also know that they have the potential to do something historic, man. Imagine if they're able to go unbeaten in all competitions throughout.
That's true. That's true.
That would be extremely crazy.
Oh my God, you're right. Because they're still in the German Cup too.
Yeah, they're still in the German Cup.
Yeah, that's true.
It would be very, very crazy. I don't think any team in the world has done that. Not that I can remember of right now. So,
nah.
I think Leverkusen should have enough quality to dispatch West Ham. West Ham are a good side, of course. They are a Premier League side, but forget league right now. I've watched a lot of Leverkusen games this season. I think they play a fantastic brand of football. They're a very well drilled team. They play so well. You can tell that all the players are enjoying themselves, and that's something that I think is working so great for them. But yeah,
the only two things to be wary, I think, that work in West Ham's favor too is one, West Ham are playing the second leg at home, so maybe that may be an advantage. There's always debates about is playing the second leg at home an advantage or not. We're not quite sure. Let's see. And I think the one thing that West Ham have going for themselves, last year, they won the Conference League. And the year before, we saw them get to the semi-finals of No. 2 years ago, they won the Conference League. No, it was last year. Anyway, they won the Conference League last year. And the year before, they went to the semi-finals of the Europa League. Yeah. So in terms of having this confidence in Europe and feeling like we belong and having players that want to showcase themselves, I think that's where West Ham are quite lucky. Bowen is trying to get into the Euros. He has 17 goals. I've my favorite guy, Paqueta, Kudus. So it'll be a hell of a tie. I think if as a neutral, if there's any game I would want to watch apart from the Liverpool one, honestly, is this game because I think it'll be quite an interesting tie for us. But yeah, I think Leverkusen, just because of these things we've discussed. But I won't be surprised if West Ham get it done.
Okay. Very well said. Okay, let's move out to the Europa Conference League now. There's only two matches for us to really discuss in this one. The first tie is Olympiacos going up against Brightosai Samuel's Fenerbahce. Even though a lot of us were focused on the Bayer Leverkusen match yesterday, Olympiacos also did a madness in their own tie. They lost their first leg 4-1, and then they went to, what are they called? Maccabi Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv, yeah.
And they dispatched 6 on them in front of their own. It was brutal. I mean, they needed extra time to do it, but still, it was a fantastic comeback. When you lose the first leg 4-1, everybody thinks that the tie is done and dusted, and for them to show that kind of resolve and score 6, they're obviously up to something. And then we have Fenerbahce on the other hand, who won comfortably over the two legs. Doing pretty well in the Turkish Super League. I mean, they are trying to see if they can win the title this year. Going toe to toe versus Galatasaray. So it's going to be an interesting one. For me, I'll just say it's hard for me to call. I think I would say Fenerbahce would win. But I also want to be realistic with myself that I don't watch the Greek Super League that much. So I also don't know what hidden quality Olympiacos might have that could show up. What I'm going off of is, their recent results. And when I think of their 6-1 that they just did, I'm like, whoa. But at the same time, I also know that the Israeli league is not that strong. Maccabi is not a very strong team. So should they even have been losing to Maccabi 4-1 in the first place? It's a very tricky one. Ultimately, I think Fenerbahce will probably go maybe like a 3-1 aggregate win. But what do you think, Olu?
No, similar to you. Even when we talk about the quality of the league, you're right about that. But I think one of the things we've always noticed watching football is there's always one team that dominates like a so-called weak league. And sometimes people underestimate them and then they come to Europe and they show you why they're there. I mean, a few years ago, we had Sheriff, some team from Moldova in the Champions
Yeah,
League.
Tiraspol.
I,
Yeah.
I think they even beat Madrid at the Bernabeu or something crazy like that. So, one thing to say with Olympiacos, they've always had European heritage. If you meet Olympiacos in the Champions League and you go to their home, it's going to be a very, very tricky day for you, 100%.
Yeah.
So, I think I saw a tweet which I think sums up this game perfectly. Someone said, this is a real European tie. This is European heritage quarter-final tie. If it was a semi-final, it might feel a bit too late, and if it was round of 16, it might feel a bit too soon. But Olympiacos, Greek big boys versus Fenerbahce, Turkish big boys. We know how crazy Greek fans are and Turkish fans are. It just has all the makings of like a truly unpredictable spectacle. So that's why I hesitate to say who would win, but I think this is another one where we might see the second leg at home play a factor. So Fenerbahce playing at home in the second leg may just about benefit them. I also think one of the things that works for both teams is they both have incentives to try to win the tournament. It's not guaranteed that they'll necessarily get into the Champions League or, the Europa League. So, and I think these teams, especially these countries, they really value the European prestige of winning a title. We saw what West Ham and Roma felt like when they won the Conference League. And if I do say so myself, it is a nicer trophy than the Europa League trophy. Personal preference. So I think this is going to be a real 50-50 tie. Maybe we might see go to extra time or penalties as well. But just for the sake of, us being Super Eagles lovers, I would like to see Osai Samuel in the semi-final. So I would say Osai Samuel's Fenerbahce will edge it. But honestly, this is just a Hail Mary guess in the air. I think very 50-50, to be honest.
Okay, and then finally, to round off on the final tie that involves Nigerian players in the Conference League, we have Rafael Onyedika's Club Brugge going up against William Troost Ekong's Park. I mean, Ekong is probably not going to be able to make the fixtures,
Nah.
from surgery. But Park lost their first leg against Dynamo Zagreb 2-0, came back in the second leg with a 5-1, very comfortable victory. And then Rafael Onyedika also lost their first leg against Molda and then came back in the second leg to win the tie. This is another one, two different leagues. The Greek league, not the strongest league in the world, like I said. The Belgian league, also not the strongest league in the world, a developmental league. But like you mentioned, Club Brugge is also a team that has Champions League experience. They have Europa League experience. They've gone toe to toe against big boys in the past. We still remember Emmanuel Dennis scoring against Real Madrid and
Bernabeu.
celebration you had to Bernabeu. So it could be a very interesting one. I think it's going to be a very close encounter. I would want to predict that PAOK will get the results. And the reason is just I watch more Club Brugge than I watch PAOK. And Club Brugge, they just have this tendency to disappoint you. Certain matches that you even think they are favorites and they're supposed to go and win, then next thing you are seeing they're losing 1-0 or they're losing 2-0. And they've not been able to really do as well in their league as I would have expected them to. Also, that first leg that they played against Molda, I didn't think that they would lose in that first leg in the first place, and it was just because of sloppy play, a few errors, not taking a few chances. And PAOK, I think PAOK also, are a good team. and they're a team that would want to show themselves, because we don't often hear of PAOK reaching semi-finals and finals of these European competitions, and I think that this is one of their best seasons in a long time. They're actually having a good year, so I think PAOK will probably edge this one, maybe 3-2. It's going to be close, but I'm going to go with PAOK. How about you?
To be honest with you, I'm not. I have very similar thoughts to you in terms of I don't watch the Greek league that often, but I like when we see these teams. I think the joy of the Conference League and Europa League is it allows you to really see the strength of some of the big boys in some of these smaller leagues. Looking at PAOK, I haven't watched too much of them, but they're the top goal scorers in the Greek league. They seem to have found a bit of efficiency, and they're still doing well without Ekong. Similar to you, I watched the Belgian league more, and Club Brugge. They're such an interesting team, aren't they? Like sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit. You just don't know what's coming with them. But I feel like Club Brugge, if they could get a very healthy lead in the first leg, they might be able to ride the wave. But I also would say I would predict PAOK, because can you imagine that second leg, bro? Like these Greek fans in a quarterfinal, like that place must feel like a furnace of like just a baptism of fire.
Bro.
And shout out to Ekong. It's a shame he won't be able to play, but we all know what he did for us. So either if any team wins, I'll be happy. But I also think this may be another one where that second leg being played in Greece might Thessalonica may just do it for PAOK. But honestly, I have a soft spot for Udica. I really don't like the fact he barely played any minutes at AFCON. I'm sure there'll be another time to talk about Pesero, but for you to play two midfielders the whole tournament when you can see your midfield struggling, and he almost acted like Onyedika was not a footballer or not good enough. This is someone that was being linked to AC Milan last summer. Like, give him a chance. I never thought Onyeka could play that well till I watched AFCON, because we've never seen him play that often. And then you almost relegate Onyedika to almost like make it seem like he's a nobody. Don't get me wrong, Yusuf played well in the first game, but we all know how Yusuf played against South Africa in that final. Let's just say the occasion kind of got to him. So I'm Team Onyedika. I want to see him play well. I want to see him flourish, and I want to see him get his opportunities, because there's definitely a very, very good player in there. With the March friendlies coming, let's see if the new manager or interim coach will give him more opportunities. But so my head says Power could win because of that second leg, but my heart wants Club Brugge to win so that Onyedika could move on to the next round, especially with Ekong injured. So fingers crossed, but let's see how it goes.
Fingers crossed. But I think Nigerian fans will be quite pleased whoever wins that tie.
Exactly.
And yeah, there you have it, guys. That's kind of the summary. It was quite a long episode, so not that much of a summary. But yeah, that's our thoughts on the Europa League and the Europa Conference League. Olu, thank you very much for joining me. I just have, I guess, one, maybe call it two questions before I let you go. Who do you think is the favorite to win a trophy across these two competitions amongst the Nigerian players? Who do you think is most likely to win a European trophy this season, of course?
In the Conference League, I have to say Fenerbahce. When you see how they're doing in the league, the mix of experience and youth, having like true certified bagsmen like Zeko in their team, I think they just have the makings of potentially winning the tie. Obviously, Aston Villa are overwhelming favourites just in terms of quality of players, but I could see Fenerbahce going all the way in the Conference League. And then in the Europa League, we've been singing all this praise about Leverkusen, so I'm not about to change my mind right now. I think if a team could win the Europa League, I'd like to see Leverkusen. And imagine the memes and the tweets from Boniface if they do it. Like, I feel like just for the entertainment factor, like, hopefully we can see Leverkusen and Boniface do. But I think for sure those are the most likely. Atalanta is it's a step too far for them. But Leverkusen, like you said, this wave they're riding, unbeaten all season. So I say Leverkusen in the Europa League and Fenerbahce in the Conference League.
All right.
And Arsenal in the Champions League.
You don't have to throw that one in there. Okay. I know we're out of time, so I'll ask you this question. just the season is nearly over. You know, most leagues have maybe 10 games left to round off, while in the quarterfinals of the European competitions. Who would you say right now is in the running for your Nigerian player of the season? Who is the player that you think has impressed you the most amongst the Nigerian players this season?
Wow, that is a absolutely amazing question, my brother. Because it's
I
a
can,
bit of an
because,
interesting year.
it's interesting. Osimhen has got quite a number of goals, but frankly speaking, we know he's not having the best time with Napoli this season.
No,
Boniface
no.
was on fire when the season started, got injured, so that kind of brought him down a little bit. Awoni started the season very well, got injured, scored some goals, got injured again, so it's a bit stop start for him. Various players are doing okay, but who in your mind? Lookman also having a good season for Atalanta. Somebody might even say we should throw in Maduka Okoye there. Won the starting shirt for Udinese, is having a good time for them. Having some fantastic matches. Who do you think?
Great question, AyoT. I think this year we have to also be honest that in terms of standout players, it's not like last year where Osimhen was clearly like, starman, or the year when Chukwueze won the Europa League for Villarreal, where we even had our end of year discussion. I think from these big leagues, we haven't necessarily seen any Nigerian player necessarily be like the standout clear best player so far. But funny enough, you said that. The three names I had in mind, one was also Maduka Okoye, just because for you to become a starting goalkeeper in a top five league, and I watched his performance in their last game. Was it against? I think I even tweeted the NFF like, I hope you guys are watching because I don't know
Yeah.
how they don't. I don't know how they don't call up this brother. Like the guy's mental resilience is something that in fact, it's much better than I expected. Now you're starting consistent games in Serie A. You're looking the part, you're showing your quality, and you're not phased by the pressure. People are looking at you. And for you to be an African goalkeeper in a top five league, especially Serie A, let's be honest, that's not very common. So he's one of the ones I would have nominated. I would have also said Iwobi, simply because we know, look at this last game, he had 7 chances created, scored the winning goal at Old Trafford. If he didn't miss a few games from AFCON, God knows what his numbers would look like. And he's not exactly playing behind Mitrovic. So a lot of his creativity is being wasted for me, but I think Iwobi's having a very, very good season. And also, shame on Nigerians who don't know how to watch football and just pick a scapegoat because he was born abroad. He wasn't even born abroad, he was born in Lagos. But the person I think for now, like you said, it would have been Boniface if he was not injured because we have to think about longevity just in terms of impact. Bro, we spoke in the summer when he signed for Leverkusen. Nobody knew who Boniface was. In the space of 2-3 months, you got people doing his dance in Germany. He's rookie of the month 4 times. Everyone knows his name. And even when you watch Boniface, the amount of assists he was getting, goals, it now made sense when I watched his interview with Mikel and he said he used to be a midfielder before. You're like, this makes sense. So it's a shame injury has caused that because I think Boniface clearly would have been a standout. To be honest, if Boniface can come back and still play in April and May, I still think he would be. But for now, I would say Ademola Lookman. Ademola Lookman has, I think, 9 goals in Serie A, continues to play for Atalanta, still with the chance of getting Champions League spots in Serie A, and also has a chance of winning the Europa League. And also, Nigerian Player of the Year. We all know what he did at AFCON. So I would say Lookman for now is the slight standout. But if Boniface comes back and does what he needs to do, then I wouldn't really pass him. And like you said, the funny thing with all this Osimhen chat, Osimhen has what, 11 Serie A goals in 15 starts, so something still ridiculous. It's just because he set the bar so high. We're like, it's like imagine trying to listen to Nice's next single after he made Gongwaso. You're like, turn that shit off, man. So I think he's a victim of his own success because if anybody else had Osimhen's numbers, we would still be talking about them with a certain view.
But at the same time, that's when you become a big player. We expect,
bro.
we expect.
Thank you. And they pay you the highest paid player in Serie A. They treat you like a god in Naples. And bro, I'm telling you, what I saw with my eyes last May when I went to Naples. People say this thing is like, he's treated like a god. Bro, with my eyes, I saw white Italians worshipping a black man. I've never seen anything like that in my life. So you're right. To whom much is given, much is expected. So Osimhen has to you're going to be judged at that level now. No longer on, oh, you scored 15 goals. Nobody cares anymore. If they're going to spend 120 million to buy you, or 103 million, I personally like a certain club in London that's red to sign him, but we shall see how it goes. But for now, 100% I would say Lookman. But let's put Boniface in brackets based on what happens for the rest of the
All
season.
right. Thank you very much, Olu. I always love talking football with you. Insightful and interesting as always. And to everyone that has watched, please let us know your own thoughts, your opinions in the comments, your prediction for the Europa League, Conference League, and of course, who you think is in the running for your Nigerian player of the season. Let us know as well. Thank you very much. This has been Eagle Striker, the home of Nigerian football. Make sure you like the video, share with your friends, subscribe to the channel to keep on enjoying Niger flavored football content. All right, have a good time, guys. Bye bye.